place myself whatever the grant come through basically.
Attention, please. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Martino, and I'm the president of the Rock Hill Historical Society. And on behalf of the Historical Society, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today to this program. And also in June of 2002, the Rock Hill Historical Society will be 40 years old. So congratulations to us. Today's program will be personal memories of the air war in Europe, and it'll be, we have the members of the Army Air Force Roundtable of Canada to speak to you today. And when the program is over, if any of you out there who were in World War II or are veterans or would like to speak, just feel free. I'd like to introduce Mr. Art Pichette, who's the head of the Army Air Force Roundtable.
What are you saying? How about speaking up a little louder?
Okay! I didn't know it was going to be a comedy show. It's supposed to be serious.
Don't be afraid to speak out.
I'm not now.
I don't know what.
Today's program will be members of the Army Air Force Roundtable of Connecticut who will speak to you on their experiences in World War II. When they're done, if anybody out there who was in World War II or is a veteran would like to have something to say or give their experiences, feel free. I'd like to introduce Mr. Art Pichette, who is the president or the head of the Army Air Force Roundtable of Connecticut, and he'll introduce the speakers to you.
I hope you'll be able to hear my voice. Can you hear me all right?
Hey,
You can.
it's too bad we don't have a mic.
We do have a microphone.
That would be fine.
You have a mic?
I do.
All right. I'll wait because while we're waiting, hold a little bit.
That sounds familiar.
Thank you.
Sit down. What this is?
Okay, are we on? How's that? Can you hear pretty well? Good. I was in the 15th Air Force during World War II. We flew out of Italy, and my assignment was as a navigator. Now, navigator tells the pilot where to go. Sometimes the pilot tells the navigator where to go, especially when he tells them the wrong way. I happen to notice that there's several navigators in the audience today. That's a little unusual. How many navigators are there here today? Let's see. My golly. This is the first time. How many pilots are there here? Oh my, this is the first time we've outnumbered them in any time that I've ever been to a meeting. I started out in pilot training, as many navigators did. About partway through, I had an unfortunate accident. I landed an airplane upside down. The government took a very dim view of it, and they said, "We rather think that you will not make a very good pilot. So how would you like to learn how to be a navigator?" I was willing, especially since they said that they wouldn't charge me for the airplane. So I ended up as a navigator, and I enjoyed doing it. I joined, like maybe some of my colleagues here, I joined with the idea that maybe it was kind of glamorous. You know, everybody wanted to fly in those days. Well, I'll tell you in a few minutes when I come back to my episodes that disillusionment set in rather early, like on the first mission, that it wasn't all that glamorous. But enough of that right now. I'd like to introduce my colleagues. We're going to talk first, and then we'll open up for some questions and answers. So over here on my right is Mr. Bob Conrad, who was in the 8th Air Force. He'll tell you what his assignment was. Mr. Jim Fontana, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Fontana, was a pilot in the 9th Air Force. And over here is Lieutenant Colonel John Swingham, who was a navigator in the 8th Air Force, in the 8th Air Force. So these gentlemen in turn will tell you about their experiences. Jim, why don't we start off with you?
My name is Jim Fontana, and I was born in Millville, Connecticut. I went to high school in Southington. I graduated in 1942, and a week later I was in California to study aeronautical engineering. I was with a bunch of fellows there, and we were beginning to get our greetings for the service, and none of us wanted to become ground soldiers. So we went down to Los Angeles and took the test for the air cadet training. 13 of us went down. The test started at 8 o'clock in the morning. It ended at 12. At 4 o'clock we got the results. 10 out of the 13 had failed. I was the only one that made it. I was sent to Kearns, Utah. From Kearns I went to Logan, Utah, and then I went to Santa Ana, California, where I took my flight training as an aviation cadet. The first time I was in an airplane was in a little Ryan PT-22 where your head was sticking out in the air. I had never seen an airplane on the ground. I had never seen the inside of an airplane. And they took me up, and I had 9 hours, and when I got through, the instructor pilot said, you better wash yourself out, you'll never be a pilot. Well, he was a civilian, and I was a military person. The next day I was shipped out to Santa Ana, California. I went through all of the testing there, and the testing showed that I would be best suited as a pilot, a navigator, or a bombardier in that order. Of course, I took pilot. I went through training, and like all 18-year-old kids, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to fly the P-38, the P-51, or the P-47. When I got to Douglas Air Force Base, which was a advanced training school, we thought we had it made because they had twin-engine airplanes there that were the forerunner to the P-38. And the commanding officer said, you can forget that. You guys are going to learn to fly B-17s and B-24s. That was the one aircraft, the four-engine aircraft, that we didn't want to fly. But every month, we had to tell them exactly what we wanted to fly in case we made it all the way through the training. A week before I graduated, they came out with that paper and said, what do you want to fly? Which was stupid because they already told us what we were going to fly. So I put down for my three choices the B-26 Marauder, which was an airplane that had a very bad reputation. Down at the MacDill Air Force Base, they called it the Flying Coffin, the Widowmaker, a B-dash crash, and they said one a day in Tampa Bay. They were losing so many airplanes that ferry pilots refused to fly it. And they couldn't get any aviation cadets to fly it. So what they did is they gave the best pilots out of flying school fake orders telling them that they were going to fly fighter aircraft. And when they got to the base, they would find nothing but B-26 Marauders. And if you know red tape, you know that you can't get out of it. The B-26, when it first came out, was sent over to the Pacific, and the pilots there were the old Army pilots that had a lot of twin-engine time, and they loved it. The airplane would take all the beatings that the Japanese could put on it. They used it for torpedo bombing, they used it for low-level bombing, and for high-altitude bombing. Over in Europe, where the 26s were with the 322nd Bomb Group, they had sent them out on a mission to go across the English Channel, right above the waves, and they were to bomb a electric generating plant that was supplying all of northern Holland with electricity, and a Nazi submarine pen. They mustered 10 airplanes, and the 10 airplanes bombed the generating plant, but when they came back, they found out that the generating plant was still working. And they found out that they had told the Dutch people that if they ever flew over Holland with bombs, they were going to use a delayed action fuse that was built by the British, and it had a 20-minute delayed action. So the Germans who weren't bombed, they listened to the radio and found out that they had the 20-minute delayed action fuse, so they had the Dutch people pick up the bombs, take them out to the open fields where they were detonated with no loss of life to any persons or to buildings. When the Americans, being Americans, said, well, we're going to have to go back because we didn't do the job, and the commanding officer said, well, if we go back, it's going to be a suicide mission. I will not take the air crews back. And the colonel said, or the general said, if you don't go back, then your replacement will. Well, he didn't want to lose his job, so he went, and when his buddy said, I'll see you tonight, he says, you won't see me tonight. They mustered 12 airplanes. They took the same route over, but halfway across the channel, one of the airplanes developed electrical problems, and he pulled up to 2,000 feet, just like we were told in training, so that if something happened to the airplane, you could bail the crew out. Well, the Germans picked that up and knew that they were coming, and when they got over the target to drop their bombs, every single airplane was shot down or crashed, killing all of the crew members and destroying all 11 airplanes. No airplanes returned back to base. Harry Truman was a senator at the time, and he was elected to a committee to investigate the B-26 Marauder, and his committee found out that the airplane was too hot, too dangerous, not to make any more, and to pull them out of combat. So they pulled them out of combat, and then about 6 months later, somebody said, well, the airplane was designed for medium altitude, let's put them up there. So they put them up there, and they flew missions over Paris, and they were hit by flak, but they all made it back. So from that day on, all the missions were flown at around 12,500 feet. This is what a B-26 Marauder looks like. You won't find any around today because every single one was destroyed. I think there's one down the Smithsonian Institute, and there's one in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. But this airplane carried a crew of 6. There was the pilot, a co-pilot, a bombardier navigator, that was one man. Then we had a radio engineer who ran the upper turret. We had a tail gunner, and we had a radio man, and he ran 2 guns in the back here. We had 11 50 caliber machine guns as protection, and that still wasn't enough. We had 2,000 horsepower engines in the airplane here, and the bad part of the B-26 is that if you lost an engine on takeoff, you would terminate your flight, and I mean terminate it. There was no way you could hold that airplane. It would flip over, and that would be the end. If you were up in the air and you lost an engine, you better start looking for an airfield or someplace to go because you're coming down. It just wouldn't fly, although there were some cases where maybe somebody got a couple of 100 miles out of it, and that was it. We carried 4,000 pounds of bombs. Usually it was 2 bombs, each bomb almost as big as a bathtub, and our targets were railroad bridges or any bridge, railroad yards, and what they called no-ball targets, which were the V-1 and the V-2 rocket sites that were the Germans were sending over to England. Most of the time, we would hit a bridge on a river. One time, we went in for briefing, and the lines from our home base up to the target was so far that we just laughed because we said, the airplane wouldn't go that far. And the colonel got up and said, this is no joke, you guys are going here today, and I'll tell you right now that you only have enough fuel for a one-way trip. I asked, after the war was over, I was talking to a fellow that lived in Germany. He was 8 years old at the time, and he was over here, he was about 20 at the time, and I said, I can't understand how you people could survive all the airplanes coming over, because at that time, a typical mission from the 8th Air Force to B-17s was 1,400 airplanes in the air, plus 800 fighters. And he said it was very easy to survive then. He said, because every time the alarm went off, he said we would run out and look to see what kind of airplanes they were. If they were B-26 Marauders, we'd run out and hide under the bridges. And you know, part of that is true, because that mission that I just told you about, where we had fuel for a one-way trip, we dropped 4,000 pounds on there. We got home, they said that bridge was still standing. Whether it was or not, I don't know. I didn't have to go
Still
back.
standing today.
Some people always ask what the markings are on the airplanes. This aircraft here has a orange diagonal down the tail. That indicates that this airplane belongs to the 344th Bomb Group. The X2 over here and the A indicates the squadron that this airplane belongs to. There's 4 squadrons to a group. I belong to the 394th Bomb Group, which had a white diagonal. The 322nd had a straight line across here, and the other airplanes had like a diamond-shaped triangle or some other means to identify the aircraft. The reason for these markings here is that if you were taken off in the morning or any day and you had to go up through 10,000 feet of rain and clouds and whatnot, when you got on the top, there'd be hundreds of airplanes around, and you wouldn't know which belonged to your squadron. So you would start looking for the markings over here that indicated that that was your squadron and that was your group, and that's what you would look for. The other reason, of course, is that the Germans had a knack of picking up some airplanes that had belly landed over there, and they would fix them up and get some German pilots to fly, and they would pull up into the formation, and they would try to shoot down the American airplanes. Unless an airplane coming into your formation gave you the colors of the day, we had a Berry pistol in there that we shot the colors of the day. That changed every day, and one day it might be red, yellow, green. Another day it might be green, yellow, red, or something like that. If he didn't give, the airplane coming in didn't give you the signal, the proper signal, that guy would get shot down in a few seconds. If an American fighter airplane, a P-47, a P-51, or a P-38 happened to come in, their job was to protect the bombers, and all they did was just circled over the top. They just turned over the top. They were going faster than we were, and they would just circle over the top. If they turned their nose toward a bomber formation, without hesitation, that airplane would get shot down. One of the most important things in flying combat is timing. If you're told take off at 8 o'clock, the first airplane off the ground takes off at 8 o'clock, and the other airplane we took off in 15-second intervals. We would climb to altitude, and in 15 minutes, because we were flying out of France, we were over enemy territory, and we would just fly in, and they'd tell us that our fighter escort would be at us at about 9:20 or something like that, and you could look out and set your clock because that fighter escort would be right there. If your time over the target was, say, 9:45, you better be there at 9:45. If you had a tailwind and got there too early, then you better pull off with a bomb run, circle someplace to run that time off, and then get on the bomb run at exactly that time. And the reason for that is we were told that if anybody is below you, when you're on a bomb run and over the target, you drop your bombs anyway. That guy has no right being there. One of the things that we carried in the airplane was we called a window. The British called it chaff. Our window looked exactly like the tin foil that you put on your Christmas tree. And when we started to get heavy flak up there, the fellows in the back of the airplane would throw it out, and that would then sort of jam the radar out there. We used to send out window ships, and they would be way below us, and I have 6 pictures taken by an Air Force photographer when they were down below a bomb group that was dropping their bombs, and the bombs hit one of the airplanes, caused it to pull up over, hit the other airplane, and within a split second, 6 men and 2 airplanes were gone. So you had to be very, very careful when you were flying over the target. The B-26 had such a bad reputation because of the landing speed and the speed that the airplane flew. With a full bomb load, we used to fly at 200 miles an hour. On the way in to the target, we'd fly at 200 miles an hour. On the way, as soon as we dropped the bombs, we always turned left off of the target unless there was a hospital or prisoner of war camp down below. And when we turned left, we would drop the nose of the airplane and we would pick up speed so that we would come out at 355 miles an hour. And the reason for that is we always said we're working for the government on the way in, we're working for ourselves on the way home. If you got hit, if you were hit and you couldn't keep up with the formation, and you would have to back off or you'd have to come out alone, we could call a radio station, and terminology changed every day there. One day it might be sweepstake, one day it might be something else. And if you call them and said, I'm hit, I want to get out of Germany, he'd ask you how bad were you hit or what the situation was. And if you weren't hit too bad, and you had time, they would take you around all the cities and around all the known flak areas. And if you wanted to come out fast, they would take you straight out. The airplane could come off of the ground. To get it off of the ground, you had to gallop down the runway to 135 miles an hour. Then you'd pull the nose wheel off, and then the airplane would start to fly, and you would start praying that it would fly. The landing speed of the airplane was 165 miles an hour on the final approach. We were the fastest landing airplane in the world at that time. And when we were in the States, we used to laugh because if we called a strange field that we were going to land at and say, we're a B-26 Marauder, they used to say, well, stand by, and we'd sit there and laugh because we knew they were calling a fire truck and an ambulance to be on the field before we landed. And then half of the field would come down there to see the B-26 that was flying. So that pretty much takes care of the airplane. I was able to get in 15 missions before the war ended, and I went to fly C-47s. I stayed in the reserve in 1946. I flew AT-6s, and then I got into an outfit up at Hanscom Field where I was flying single-engine jets, and I retired out of the service in 1972 as a lieutenant colonel. So that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Conrad.
Yes, good afternoon.
You're outnumbered today.
In many ways.
In many ways.
Regular, that solves the problem.
Here's the mic. Let me just add one thing before, and that is P-51, which he's going to talk about. You know, the generals in the Air Force had the weird theory that it was possible for B-17s and B-24s to fly to a target without any escort because they were so heavily armed. We had 13 50 caliber machine guns on a B-17. This is the B-17. Most of you have heard about that. Okay, they were terribly wrong about that. We lost lots and lots of airplanes to enemy aircraft until, ta-da!
Ta-da, right, here we go. You hear us in back now. I make sure everybody can hear us. If you start walking out on the idea, maybe you don't hear so good. Well, anyway, my name is Bob Conrad. I live in Bristol. I did not go into service in Connecticut. I went from Brooklyn, New York. They held that against me for the rest of the 3.5 years I was in, but managed to survive. I'll show you this stuff I got on me. The staff sergeant is a rating which goes with my job, which was called a crew chief. Crew chief. That means crew. I was the crew. There were about 3 or 4 other guys wandering around. I went overseas with a P-47 fighter outfit. The P-47's engine was made here in East Hartford, Pratt & Whitney. And after the battle line got beyond their reach and they had to get over and back, then they switched, our outfit switched to these P-51s, the Mustang, and it had a British engine, the Rolls-Royce engine, a sweetheart of a plane. But my story, quite briefly, can be told this way. I was a draftee. I was down at the bottom of the heap as far as any kind of rank is concerned. I was drafted from Syracuse, New York, and I was sent immediately with a bunch of guys who were even greener than I was to Miami Beach, Florida, and there they plugged us into these movie theaters that the Army had taken over and gave us a bunch of aptitude tests. Well, let me tell you, it was one of the miracles of World War II that they could take a slug like me, didn't know anything, and say that I was just made to be an aircraft mechanic. So they sent me out to Lincoln, Nebraska, and said, lots of luck, Bobby, and you're going to be an airplane mechanic. So I went through school out there and learned a few things. I learned how I could identify the tools pretty well, the screwdriver, things like that. Then we went into our outfits. We were going to stay with either bombers or fighters. I wound up in a fighter group in Westover Field, Massachusetts. And a few weeks after that, I was in Groton, Connecticut, and with a bunch of guys who were coming in from Texas. They were flyers. They were pilots. We got to know each other pretty well in a short time. But anyway, that was my brief story, training in Lincoln, Nebraska, to be an airplane mechanic. The thing about that was, in the service, you didn't have to know a heck of a lot. You picked it up on the job training, sort of. You learned real quickly, and there was always somebody close by who could help you, bail you out if you had a problem you didn't quite understand, some sort of mechanical problem with the airplane. So we would call on these upper grade guys, and they would bail us out. But our job, quite briefly, was to keep those birds flying every day. My job was, it was a rigorous whole list of inspections, very, very rigid inspections that we pulled on those airplanes every day. And that gets you by. You tell the kids, usually we speak to kids, 14, 16-year-old kids, and I tell them, my job, I'll explain it this way. If an airplane that I'm taking care of gets up there on a mission and has engine trouble at 10,000 feet, there aren't any gas stations up there you can pull into. There's nothing you can pull off the road and say, hey, I got a little problem under the hood. That plane has to be in excellent flying condition every inch of the way. So we had that drilled into us. When I landed at the Grenier Field in New Hampshire, one of the first things we did was they took us out to the end of the outskirts of the airport, and they showed us the remains of a plane which had crashed. And they told us that the reason that plane crashed was that it did not have proper maintenance, proper upkeep. So, you guys get it through your skulls that somebody flying that thing depends on you. His life depends on how well you do your job. So there's no room for fooling around. There's no room for error. You can't fix things in the sky. There aren't any gas stations up there. So you get that through your head that when you're guys are on a mission, that that plane has got to perform, and we got that way because we went through this series before missions and after missions. So all kinds of very close inspections. Everything in that airplane, and the engines all the way to the tail. So, going overseas, I wound up in a fighter group, and they say they're talking about a group of 4 squadrons. In a fighter group, you have 3 fighter squadrons, are in a fighter group. And I was at a station, maybe 7 or 8 miles east of Ipswich, and we ran in with the civilian population. And one of the first weekends that I had, I took a hike off the base itself right up to the village, and there was a school there, and I wondered why outside that school on the grounds of these long, deep ditches. What are these ditches supposed to be for? The guy, the custodian at the school said, well, when the Jerry's coming over, when the Luftwaffe is coming over, the air raid sirens go off, and the kids dive into those ditches, and they stay there until the Luftwaffe has gone home. So I got the picture immediately. You get the picture right away. I tell these kids, again, we speak to the usually kids, there's always a bell or buzz or something on the wall. I said, what was that for? And they say, it's a fire drill. Well, let me tell you about air raid drills in England, where I saw them, and the kids weren't going out because of the possibility of fire. They were going out to try to save themselves if the Germans started bombing where they were. But we were close to the civilian population. They really had it tough. We, the ground guys, we had it pretty easy. Nobody shooting at us, with maybe the exception of almost daily flights over by those, and maybe you've heard of the buzz bombs near the end of World War II. The buzz bombs were unmanned planes that the Luftwaffe put together, had a bomb load on them, and then they would take off and had enough fuel to get that thing to London, they hoped. But many times they didn't get that far. Many times they would be over our base or close to it, and all of a sudden the engine would cut out, and you hit the deck. Well, of course, I knew better than the deck. I knew nobody's going to hit me. I'm going to survive. I heard one of those buzzes coming one day, clack, 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 and all of it's cut out. I kept walking right along, and wham! I got knocked right on my, it's back here someplace. Because this thing went off, and I was just too smart, I thought, to have any danger. But that's what the civilians, we weren't any different than civilians. The civilians lived with that possibility every day. But our fighter group went over with the B-17s and the B-24s. I don't think we had any B-26s to be around where we were, but it was primarily an escort job. They would keep the German fighters away from our guys and then fly home. Of course, after the mission, after the bombers had reached their target and released their bombs, then our guys were on their own to do what they had go to whatever target of opportunity, whether in the air or on the ground, and they made the most of that. I live in Bristol, and as it turned out, one of the pilots in my fighter squadron was from Bristol. His name was Gus Beach. Gus Beach was a fighter pilot with us at P-47, and on one of the first missions that our guys flew, his P-47 was shot down by a B-17. The gunner on a B-17 got confused with maybe the Focke-Wulf from the German Luftwaffe, and shot down our B-17, and with it, Gus Beach from Bristol, Connecticut. Well, he bailed out and landed okay, but of course he was taken prisoner immediately and stuck in a stalag over there, spent the rest of the war that way. But I get back to my story, I think that's what I'm here for. I usually start, when I'm speaking to the kids, by asking the kids if they have anybody got older brothers. And of course the hands shoot up all over the class, so a lot of the kids do have older brothers. So I tell them all, that's where we were. That's where we were when when World War II hit. We were about their age. We were in the upper teens. I was an old geezer. I was 21 years old when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. But I tell them that we were close. You can identify with what your older brothers would face if the same situation involved them. But you guys, I think I'd say you have brothers or sisters or friends who were in the service, more likely in this age group. But that's what I tell the kids. We were about where they are now, with an older brother in upper teens. The day of Pearl Harbor, I was playing touch football in a park in Syracuse, New York. And when it got dark, started to get dark, I went home, and when I walked in the front door, my mother said, something on the radio, we didn't have TV back then, of course, something on the radio about Japanese planes attacking Hawaii. Well, that was December 7th, 1941. In that game of touch football, probably 7 or 8 of us up there playing football, 2 of the guys didn't come back. 2 of the guys didn't make it. So that's what we're here for, because all of us have known men who did not come back. We've worked with or flown with guys who did not come back. We want to keep their memory alive. We want to jump off the pages of textbooks and appear before you and the kids, so that you can relate to what their situation in life and what ours was. So that's about it, and I'll shut up now and sit down, and maybe you'll have questions. But by the way, my youngest grandchild is having a birthday party today. She's 8 years old, so I wasn't linger too long, but I really got to show up at that birthday party. Becky, okay?
Thank you, Bob. And I want to tell you that I'll go on record in saying that I am very, very happy that the P-51s existed. Once the P-51s got on the scene, the number of losses that we had due to enemy action, due to enemy aircraft, went down very, very dramatically. However, the bad news was that the Russians were winning on the Russian front, and the Germans were taking all their anti-aircraft out of Russia and putting it in Germany, so that instead of having just a few guns around the big targets, they ended up with a couple of hundred around each target. You can't believe just how many anti-aircraft guns were over some of the big targets, like Black Hammer and Brooks and Vienna and so on, 200 or 300. And flying along there, you just see a black cloud right in front of you. The cloud is up there. What is that cloud? You might wonder the first time you saw it, in all ignorance. And as you come up closer, you can see individual black puffs. And you suddenly realize that those are guns down there, and they're shooting at you, and they are trying to do you bodily harm. And it becomes the war becomes very close and personal at that point. On my very first mission, that's the way it appeared to me, except that we were flying in a snowstorm, much like the one today. It was snowing so badly that I thought that I didn't think we would be able to find the target. The good news was that I didn't think that the Germans would be able to find us either, because we could just about see the ends of the wingtips. We were flying close formation, and we had all these airplanes up there, 200 or 300 in our division, and wondering why we weren't all crashing into each other. However, the Germans did find us because they had very good radar, and they were shooting away at it. And I'm looking out there, and I'm just trying to find the ground so we could make sure we're on target. And however, they found us, and I see pieces of flak coming right through the windshield and bouncing off. At that point, I put on the helmet. At that point, I decided that maybe they knew what they were talking about when they said you need to wear this flak helmet. At that, several missions went by without incident, but on the last one that I flew, we got hit on the way to Target, to Dinsbrook. We're flying along over the Alps, excuse me, and beautiful, clear day. Nothing in sight. No airplanes, no enemy aircraft. And all of a sudden, a burst of artillery, flak artillery came up right off our wingtips. someone said, "Flag at 9 o'clock." The next shot was right on the airplane with hardly any preliminary. They zeroed right in on us, and we got hit. Now, one of the things about being young is that you think that you're immortal. Never did I think that I would be wounded or hit. I always thought, well, somebody else is going to get it, but not me. I'm going to come through this. Is that the way you felt too? Immortal. Okay, so my reaction when the airplane actually got hit with anti-aircraft fire was one of amazement and disbelief. It's hard to take in. There it is. It's on fire. What's going to happen now? It can't be. It's like a movie. I didn't think it was really true. And then it's sunk in. And our plane went into a spin, and the plane blew up. Most of the crew was blown out of the airplane. Some of them were able to bail out, pardon me, in time. But 4 of us were blown right out of the aircraft. And I was knocked unconscious, and as I was going through the air, suddenly I regained consciousness just in time to see the ground come up and hit me. I hit the ground with my parachute unopened. People ask, how far did you fall? What happened? Nobody knows exactly. All we know is the aircraft blew up, the plane crashed, the pilot and the co-pilot were blown out through the cockpit windows. The bombardier was blown out through the nose, and I was blown out through the side. And their parachutes opened and mine didn't. And I'm here to tell you about it. Landing on the side of the mountain, I thought I was killed because I didn't see anything. I was unconscious at first. When I regained consciousness, slowly I felt cold, and I realized I was face down in the snow, and I rolled over, and there I was, perfectly alive. Busted up, but alive. I won't go into all the... Excuse me. Yeah. I realized that I was alive and reasonably intact, had some broken bones. And then my biggest worry was in getting rescued. Excuse me. Fortunately, I got picked up by a German soldier within a short time. Was carried on a litter down the mountains on a sled and taken prisoner of war. So I am extremely glad to be here. When I tell you I'm glad to be here today, believe it. Extremely grateful. So I think I'll end my story at that time because for some reason I'm losing my voice. And I'm going to ask John if he wants to say a few words. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm John Swingen from Martha Hill. There wasn't much of a journey for me to get here this afternoon. I grew up in North Dakota, went to junior college there, and worked in Illinois, and worked in Illinois and Ohio, and Baltimore, Maryland, and I was in Washington, D.C. on December 7th, and I enlisted in the Air Cadets on the 5th of December in 42. I was working for a company in construction work, so my meal didn't keep up with me, and I was called up in March in Philadelphia, but at that time I was in Niagara Falls, New York. I had learned about the situation, called the recruiting place in Philadelphia. By this time I had moved to New York City on a construction job, so I was told immediately to call the location service in New York City. And I did so, and I was called up and left for the service from New York City. I didn't know I was still in New York City. I got on the train with a bunch of air cadets, and we got, after 7 days and 7 nights on the train, we ended up in Biloxi, Mississippi. And there military training began. I was fortunate to be classified both as a pilot and a navigator. But I wanted to be a pilot. Any young man wants to fly. And so I started pilot training and got somewhere between basic and advanced, washed out because of lack of proper instrument flying. But here I had the joker in my pocket. I pulled her out and was assigned to navigation school and went to Pan Am School of Navigation. And graduated from the last class of navigation there with Jack Smith, who was sitting in the front row right up there. We both graduated from the last class of Pan Am. After me, my crew, and so forth, we crossed the Atlantic on the France in 8 days, unescorted, and we got assigned to the 25th Bomb Group in Wadham, England. This is a weather reconnaissance group in the B-17s in the heavy weather squadron, which is 652nd. We had 2 other squadrons who were playing with the British Mosquitoes. And they were used for weather over target and command missions and staff missions, as something I just spoken of. With the British Mosquito was 2 500 Rolls-Royce engines, and it carried a bomb load of 5,000-pound bomb. And it was the fastest propeller-driven aircraft before jets. And it could walk away from most of the fighters, and so they were very useful in combat. Our mission was different. The source of weather prior to World War II was data that was gathered from the ships at sea and was reported to the weather in all the different areas where weather observations were kept. And once the war started, the submarines scare, not only scare, but loss of ships and submarines, the ships at sea had to be silent. So instead of getting the weather out there from the ships, we went out there and got it. We went out in B-17s and we were stripped down. All we had was belly tanks, wing tanks. We were a flying gas tank. We had a crew of 5 or 6, navigator, a pilot, co-pilot, radio man, flight engineer. We sometimes had a gunner, sometimes we didn't. Because all we had was the waist guns on each side. Well, we flew from England to Iceland to Greenland and back to England on a triangular flight. And depending on whether our flights averaged somewhere between 11 hours and almost 15 hours. I think my longest was 14 hours and 46 minutes. That's a long time to be flying, particularly when we had so little navigation aid. We trained at Pan Am and we learned celestial navigation, but in the wintertime over in the North Seas, there's not very much chance of seeing any sun or any stars either. So we were flying mostly on dead reckoning most of the time. We had one radar station in Iceland and one in Greenland, but the lines of position were so close that you could either be 200 miles off down here or 200 miles off up here, where you weren't just right. Fortunately, we had a good crew, and we flew our 25th mission on the E-Day. We had to continue to provide weather data for getting the troops back home, so we continued to fly, gathering this data for the U.S. forces until the British got set up for their weather again, because we reported during the war directly to the British government, and we stayed on RAF bases. So I came back after 44 missions. The last 19 of them were not combat missions, they were simply weather missions. And I came back because they needed navigators in Japan. But by the time I got home in North Dakota after my leave and out to Santa Ana, California, the J-Day had passed and they put me back on the train again. So I went back to the East Coast and resumed my job with Allied Engineering out of Cleveland. My boss is Allied Engineering, formerly been head of ceramic engineering at Ohio State University, so he sent me to Columbus to enroll as an engineer. Unfortunately, at the time, they were only taking Ohio residents in their Ohio State in their School of Engineering. So I had back in my pocket, I had my degree, two-year associate degree from North Dakota School of Forestry in floriculture, and so I went to the floriculture department, and there I was an upperclassman and I was accepted. So I enrolled in horticulture, and I figured in the beginning that I'd switch into engineering when I had a chance, but there was a girl in the floriculture department, and she's here with me. And 54 years ago we got married, so that ended my career as an engineer. And so we both spent our career in horticulture, and I'm sure you will remember the West Flower Shop in North Dakota, which is now closed. And so this ends my sector. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, at this point, we're willing to take any questions or comments from the audience, and we have some items here that you might want to ask about. We'll leave it up to you. Yes, sir.
What altitude did the bombers fly, basically?
As high as you could. The higher the better. In my group,
we flew usually around 25,000 feet. It'd be 17 of it. But if we could get up higher, we would go higher. I heard some people say they went as high as 30,000 feet. I find it hard to believe that they could get up that high consistently.
And why did the United States or American fly daylight bombing versus nighttime bombing, which the British did?
All right, I'll give you the answer that at the beginning of the war, there was a great deal of controversy about bombing in general. As a matter of fact, the British didn't want the RAF to do any bombing whatsoever of cities. They were using propaganda. There was a great deal of moral outcry against bombing in general. So when the United States got into the war, they did not want to be in the position of bombing civilians. That's what it comes down to. They didn't want to bomb civilians. And when you bomb an area, there's no way that you can avoid bombing civilians. Their idea was to have precision daylight bombing. To pick out an industrial target. And that's what we did. We aimed for industrial targets. Supposed to be precision, but the thing is, the reality was it was impossible to go to the targets in the daytime without proper bomb cover, without fighter cover. And the RAF in turn tried daylight bombing. They were very unsuccessful at it, so they went to night bombing. But that's area bombing.
Did you ever encounter the ME-262
Yes.
German jet,
Was.
which was towards the end of the war?
Yes.
Right. And did you ever hear about, or which I have heard, that sometimes B-1, B-2 rockets coming over the channel, that some of the fighters would scramble and that they would tip the wings of the rocket to get them to go down?
I wasn't in England, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, that happened where a fighter could get underneath the wing, pick it up and flip it over. That happened.
Yeah, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the war, when the P-51 Mustangs, or basically, which was a long-distance fighter, that was a big accomplishment to the fighter groups, were they not?
Yes, it was.
The ones.
I think we'd all agree that that was the best airplane in the war.
I'll just say one thing on behalf of the P-47 pilots. I was in an Army division, and what it to be, the Germans' equipment, their armored tanks were so far superior to the American tanks, no doubt about that. And if it wasn't for P-47 pilots, especially in the Battle of the Bulge, which the Germans had the advantage because of the cloud coverage was well known and everything. When December 23rd came out and the cloud cover precipitated and we saw the P-47 pilots, we knew we had it. I mean, that was our salvation. Those P-47 pilots, for our experience, was our salvation.
Yes, sir.
In line with his, I got bad back, so I'm not going to stand. I was at Malmby the day that he's talking about, December 23rd, when the skies opened up and everything in the air was there. I always questioned if they only could have come and bombed through some of that cloud cover, it would have saved thousands and thousands and thousands of GIs. My other question is, did any of you people have the experience of being involved with the bombing at St. Lo?
St. Lo.
St. Lo.
No.
That is when General McNair was killed, when General Patton sprang up into the Brittany Peninsula. We headed to Paris, and they had put up the color markers as to where they were going to bomb. Wind came in, blew the color markers back, and did a job. That was probably one of the first enemy fires that killed the general in World War II. I'm just wondering what the communications was from ground to air on something like that. Because I know
I can't answer it. Said I can't answer that. All I can tell you is that I've been on a couple of missions where we did ground support, and they are very tough assignments for heavy bombers.
I was a combat engineer, and we were poised to put up a bridge beyond St. Lo for the breakthrough. And we were right up close with bridge equipment to break out. And we had to scatter back as that blew back. And a correspondent by the name of Bernie Powell jumped under the same truck as I did to stop the flight. So that's just...
Yes, sir.
I'd like to say a few words. The 15th Air Force, that's where I flew when I was a navigator. Completed a tour of duty over 45 missions. But I'd like to compliment the ground crew. When we trained in the States, if we had an engine that would go bad, it would take 3 days to replace the engine. When we came back from missions, our engines were smoking or leaking or tops feathered. The crew chiefs were there ready for us, and they replaced that engine overnight. And we would be taken off the next morning at 7 o'clock. So I compliment these fellows on the ground. Without them, we couldn't have made it.
On those two airplanes, the fighters you're talking about, the 47 and the 51, yeah, I'll be right with you. But the argument will go on till the end of time, which is a better airplane, the 47 or the 51. Mainly the range is what tips it toward the 51, the Mustang. Beautiful airplane, easy to maintain. 47 was a big, I think 6 or 7 ton compared to 4 tons for this baby. But 47 could really soak up so much punishment you wouldn't believe. Those things would come back flying with cylinder heads blown off by enemy action. It was a tough airplane. The pilots, as I say, the argument would go on forever, which was the better. Both planes were susceptible to good piloting, and we had the good pilots. But on those, the business about the maintenance, yes, we were not under any whip. We got along pretty well with the guys who we answered to as our bosses, more or less. But yes, the idea is that their lives depend on how well we do our jobs, just as simple as that. So if we didn't need any more incentive than that to do the best we could. I've been in the airplane hangar, when they say this bird has got to be in the blue the next morning. And I can remember working on a tail, I guess, in an airplane hangar, and all of us I saw this was 3 o'clock in the morning. And all of us I saw the figure in the doorway. Who was it? My pilot, 3 o'clock in the morning. He was just coming by to see how it was going and whether he could look forward to getting it back together again. I said, Lieutenant, this bird's going to be in the blue, go back to bed. So it was in the blue. We flew that morning. And that's just a story, a capsule form of how we did every day following inspections. You wouldn't believe the length of inspections and everything very closely. But let me tell you, just digress just this moment. The officer enlisted man thing goes on forever in the military, doesn't it? In Grenier Field, New Hampshire, I had the pleasure and great satisfaction of blowing a general's cap off. Idiot stood behind my airplane, and I had to pre-flight that sucker. I had to run the engine up and see how it was going. And this general, Brigadier General, 1 star, came with some civilians, some friends of his, relatives, I don't know what they were, but they're behind my airplane. If you get behind an airplane, you get the prop blast, the propeller, you can't help it. I've got to get that thing ready for the pilot in a few minutes. And I yelled at the guy, waved my arms around, you please take your guests and move off to one side. Well, the general doesn't usually take orders from a staff sergeant. As a matter of fact, I think I, at that time, was still a corporal. So he's not going to take orders or suggestions from a corporal. So he stood his ground out there with his guests. And I'm in the cockpit of that 47, and my pilot is coming this way in a Jeep. So I gave it the gun. The last thing I saw, that general was chasing his hat down the end of our way. So once in a while we do have a moment of some satisfaction.
Yeah, I'd like to just say something about this strategic bombing that was brought up before over here. Everybody heard about the Norden bomb site, but, you know, on a bombing mission, there was only one airplane that carried the Norden bomb site. There was one in the number 4 position, but if that number 1 airplane happened to miss the target... Not true. Not true here? Not
True on some outfits.
That was true in the 26 outfits.
But in the 17s, it wasn't true.
Everyone had an Norden bomb thing?
That's not true. B-24s, we all had Norden bomb sites.
Well, the 26s, there was only one bomb site in the lead airplane.
I think you guys flew low enough that you could throw the bombs on it.
So if he shot over the target, then everybody shot over the target.
Now, we all had bomb sites because lots of times the lead plane would go down and somebody else would have to take over.
Well, if our lead plane went down, the number 4 plane would move up and, but we flew a lot closer formation than,
Well, we were about 6 feet apart on the wing tips. On the B-24.
yeah.
Sorry, Jim. Yes, sir.
I was a tech sergeant on the B-24 engineer gunner, and I flew a tour of 30 missions, including D-Day, June 6, 1944. There's always controversy about the B-17 and the B-24. The B-24 was the underdog, but the B-24 carried 4 ton of bombs, the B-17, 3.
Right.
Our cruising speed was 165 miles an hour. I think the 17 was about 150, 155. The range of the B-24 was a lot more than the B-17. And in Europe, there were more B-17s, but over 7,000 B-17s were shot down. And there were about 2,200 B-24s shot down. I was with the 392nd Bomb Group, and what made me get there was on March 18th, 27 B-24s went to Friedrichshafen and only 12 returned. So they needed 15 replacement crews, and I happened to be in Stone, England. And 15 crews went to the 392nd. I started on missions on April 8th, April 9th to 2nd, April 10th to 3rd. We lost 10 planes. So out of those 15 crews, 10 were shot down. I completed my tour on April 15th at that time. There were 5 crews remaining out of the 15.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
First day that we arrived in combat in France.
You want the light?
Pardon?
Do you want the light?